Raves, parties, EDM shows. I have done it all. Drugs like Molly and ecstasy and DMT, anything to enhance my experience. I've done loads of acid and mushrooms, sitting on my couch at home looking for that glimpse of what the color purple tastes like, or the music created by the number 16. Some people call it being wild or free-spirited, some call it reckless and addictive, and I call it searching for a higher consciousness. A way to pierce the veil, see the ghosts on the other side, have a conversation with the tracers as someone waved hello. I'm a drug enthusiast, a connoisseur of psychedelics. At least I thought I was. It was all before the middle of the night meetup that I had with my dealer a few months ago, when he told me that he had something new, something nobody else had. I was excited. It sounded like exactly what I was looking for. The parking lot we met at was poorly lit, with some of the lights either flickering or not lit at all. It was a pretty typical meeting place for us because the convenience store the lot belonged to was rather dingy and shady anyway. The owner never really left the building, and I think he was afraid to call the cops for any suspicious activity because he was working a few questionably legal activities himself. I sat in my car patiently but eagerly, underneath one of the flickering lights at the far end of the parking lot. The volume was low, but I could hear the radio DJ rambling on about upcoming concerts for bands I didn't care for. And finally, after about 20 minutes of waiting, I saw this car pull into the parking lot and make his way over to me. He parked in the opposite direction as me, so our driver's windows could meet, and we could talk and exchange without having to get out of our vehicles. "You're trying to catch a glimpse of the other side, right?" he says to me as he rolls his window down. "Yeah. Why, man? You have some killer acid for me this time?" He chuckled to himself before he spoke. "No, man. No acid. What I have for you is something new. Something that'll show you a whole new world. It'll make you see things differently, so to speak." Excited to try something new, I didn't notice how his words were spoken in a sinister riddle, or how his gaze clearly had some secrets hidden. "So, is it like DMT? Or like mescaline? Or peyote? What's the trip like, man?" I realized now that those were the wrong questions. And what I should have been asking were more like, how long was it going to last? And if it was going to kill me, or at least what he meant by see whole new worlds. Again, however, I was far too caught up in the excitement of something new. No, it's nothing like any of those. Like I said, it's something new. At this point, I was beginning to get upset at the lack of answers that I was getting from him about the new drug, so I thought I'll just ask him questions that he might actually answer. "Well, what's it called?" I said. Instead of answering, he held his hand out of the window and into mine with his palm facing the roof of my car. $100 was all he said. Disappointed in my lack of answers, yet still so intrigued, I set 5 folded 20s into the palm of his hand, and he recoiled his hand back inside the vehicle. He counted it, and after a few seconds of rustling in his lap, he extended his fist into my vehicle again. He opened his fist to reveal 5 small, neon green pills. "It's called Portal," he said with a smile on his face. I scooped the 5 pills from his palm and into mine. As I sat there inspecting them, I noticed that they had an almost glow to them, like they'd been cooked with a glow-in-the-dark paint. The look of the pills was utterly mesmerizing. He pulled his hand back into his own vehicle and continued speaking in his usual sinister tone. "Don't take more than 1 at a time. Don't take 1 till you get home." As soon as he said that, he rolled his window up and drove off, not giving me any chance to ask any more questions. I rolled my window up and sat staring at the pills for a few more minutes. The small green capsules nearly had me in a trance, just looking at them. Excitement began to build inside me, and I decided I better put them away and get myself home before I completely ignored what he had said and took one right there and then. I drove back to my house, filled with so much anticipation that it was difficult to avoid speeding down the road and racing back home to take one. I knew they had to be strong because he wouldn't have told me to wait if they weren't. He'd never let me down before, so I trusted that he had found me some crazy hallucinogen. one that would be far too powerful for me to try and drive on. I carefully made it home and carried my new treasures into the house. It was a Thursday, and as excited as I was, I decided to wait one more night and take it the next day so I would have the weekend to experience it. After having decided this, I placed the 5 pills into an old medicine bottle and set the bottle in the drawer in my bathroom. Now, I live by myself, so I didn't have to worry about anyone else messing with or mistakenly taking my stash. I sat on my couch for a few more hours watching old episodes of Futurama before I went to bed. The whole time I sat there, I couldn't get the glowing green capsules or what he had said out of my mind. Show you a whole new world, I kept thinking, repeating in my head. With a smile, I said out loud, alone in my living room, "Damn, that's gonna be some trippy shit." By the time it had reached 3 a.m. and still having to work at my shitty job as a fast food cook tomorrow, I decided it's probably best to go to bed. I have a lot of trouble sleeping that night. The mix of anticipation and the fact that I couldn't shake the vision of those pills resting in my hand, glowing softly against my skin. Eventually, my eyes began to droop. I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The next day at work, doing little more than flipping burgers, I could barely concentrate knowing that I had those little pills sitting at home waiting for me. I also couldn't get my dealer's words out of my head. "What?" my coworker said to me while I was idly standing next to the grill. "Huh? Oh, nothing." I hadn't even realized I said it out loud. That day droned on as I waited for my shift to be over, just staring at the clock. The second my shift was finally over, I sprinted out to my car as if I were on fire. Riddled with excitement, I sped home. It was nearly 7 by the time I got home, and after a shower, I got my typical tripping supplies laid out at my coffee table. Paper and pencils for drawing, if I wanted, a gallon of orange juice and a cup, bottles of water and Gatorade, my laptop set up with my 12-hour tripping playlist. And last but not least, a change of comfy clothes that I left on my counter in the kitchen. I could have gone even further with it because I had strobe lights, black lights, fog machine, disco balls, basically everything I needed to have my own personal rave in my house. So I live in this older farmhouse, roughly 3 miles outside of town. My nearest neighbor is just on the edge of town, 3 miles away. I chose to live here specifically because I knew that I could be as loud or as obnoxious as I wanted to be, and I'd never have to worry about someone calling the cops on me. This very fact is the reason anytime my friends want to throw a party, they always have it at my place. Once I felt completely prepared for my drug-fueled adventure, I went to the bathroom and I pulled the pill bottle out of the drawer and then returned to my couch and coffee table. I spilled the 5 capsules onto the surface of the table and watched the glowing contents of each pill swirl within. I picked up one of the pills and I held it close to my face, inspecting it much closer than I had before. It's clearly not like anything I had taken before, and for a split second, worry flashed through my mind. And just as I was about to pop the pill into my mouth, I stopped. I noticed something I hadn't before when I was inspecting them. Inscribed on the side in a red scratchy font was the number 3. I set the pill down and I grabbed another. This time it was much easier to find since I had been purposefully looking for it, but this one said 5. I inspected all of the pills, and sure enough, each one was labeled with the number 1 through 5. I thought this might mean that they must have been the first 5, or that very first batch. But as soon as the thought entered my mind, why would they number each pill they made? That wouldn't make sense, I thought to myself. Maybe it meant the order I was supposed to take them in. But why would it matter what order I took them in? I thought to myself again. Even though it seemed like just another ridiculous conclusion, it's the one that I decided to go with. So I found the capsule labeled 1, and with a deep breath and the open bottle of water in my other hand, I threw it to the back of my throat, took a drink of water, and swallowed the odd swirling green pill down. Once I swallowed, I took another big swig of water from the bottle and sat back on the couch for a few seconds. I figured, like most other hallucinogen I had taken, it'd be roughly 20 or 30 minutes before I would take any sort of effect. I was very, very wrong. Within 5 minutes, my first hallucination blasted into my mind, and I instantly understood why they called it Portal. In front of my eyes, a small black ball formed in the middle of my living room. It looked like a black hole surrounded by bright red arcs of electricity. The ball quickly stretched, floor to ceiling, and then wall to wall. My eyes widened, and my first thought was, holy shit, this stuff is good. And then I blinked, and I was no longer in my living room. The world around me was dark, and the sound of heavy bass and what seemed like distant alien electronic music. Is that what this drug did? Did it just create an intense rave inside your mind? That was crazy. And I was ecstatic at the thought. Neon and fluorescent colors swirled through the air, and I could feel the music growing louder. I could feel the bass in my chest. I had to get to the source. I stood up and began to walk. As I took my first few steps, I expected to stumble into my coffee table, since I was clearly still in my living room, and this was all inside my head, but I didn't. I walked freely, as if I was truly in another location. I walked through the darkness, moving toward the direction of the music. The strange tentacles of glowing neon lights bent and floated around me as I moved. In the distance, I began to see spotlights moving around the sky, and strobe lights began to flash in the darkness. As I got closer, I saw a massive stage-like structure and mind-blowing alien creatures in the hundreds of thousands in a sea of dancing and moving beings. The music boomed in my ears as I continued to walk forward amongst all these unusual creatures. I noticed that the amount of bodies stretched out in all directions, further than I could see. My body was filled with such an intense euphoric feeling, exponentially stronger than any Molly I'd ever taken, and I began to jump and bounce and dance along with all the creatures. I lifted my arms, yelling out my elations at this amazing experience. I decided to continue making my way to the stage, or at least closer to it, but as I moved, it still seemed so far away. There were still so many bodies to weave and push around between me and it. Unable to stop myself, I danced and I hopped and I grooved my way forward. Nothing in the crowd seemed to have any malicious intent, and the experience seemed to be like being at the best show I'd ever been to, on the best drugs I'd ever had. It seemed to take hours as I slowly danced and wiggled my overjoyed body towards the front and nearer to the stage. I was having the most amazing time of my life, and I never wanted to leave. It was the most amazing light and laser show that truly blew my drug-filled mind. The music never stopped or paused. It just flowed. And as strange yet familiar as it was to me, I couldn't get enough. As I got closer, the crowd began to change. The creatures around me slowly changed from dancing and partying to becoming a lot more physical with each other. It seemed like furthest from the stage was simply an epic party, and the closer I got, seemed like it was more of the people at raves that take too much ecstasy. I can't stop rubbing their hands on each other. I'd seen it at shows many times before. I didn't think too much about it, besides the thought of, oh, looks like somebody's gonna get a little frisky tonight. And I kept moving and then dancing my way closer until I simply couldn't get any further. The crowd around me, this close to the stage, they devolved into, well, there's no other way to put it, but a massive alien orgy. The creatures were so foreign to me that I couldn't describe exactly what was going on, because I can't really begin to describe their anatomy or how it worked, but I just knew that that's what I was standing in the middle of. All I could do was dance to the music and watch in awe as what lay before me, a writhing mass of alien sex. I had also begun to randomly get groped myself. A hand would run down my back here, followed by a tentacle or something rubbing up my leg. It was also insane, and no matter how disturbing or crazy I thought that it would be, I couldn't help that I felt the most amazing I'd ever felt in my life. Just then, the music stopped. Everything went black. I felt a rush of air and pressure on my chest as if I had been strapped to a rocket that had just taken off. Screaming back into view, I was once again in my house. But instead of my couch, I was upstairs in my bedroom, just standing, staring at my doorway to the master bathroom. Wildly confused and with an impending headache, I wobbled as I walked back downstairs. My lips were cracked. I was incredibly hungry, Every muscle in my body was sore, and when I made it back to my living room, I saw the room had been destroyed, almost like in the movies when somebody ransacks a house looking for a top-secret file or stolen drug money. This only exacerbated my confusion. I felt like I just run a marathon with no training, thirsty and exhausted. "That was incredible!" I said, out loud in an empty house. "Holy shit! I really need to go lie down and sleep." And then thought to myself. I took 2 steps back towards the steps up to my bedroom and suddenly turned back around and raced to the bathroom near me, having a violent urge to vomit. I hadn't had any food since lunch that day, so nothing exited my stomach except for bile, followed by some very painful dry heaving. Once I was done, I started back towards the steps. And when I got halfway up the steps, I heard the familiar sound of a repetitive electronic beeping. "Wait, is that my fucking alarm clock?" I muttered as I continued upstairs. "That's weird. It's only set to go off on weekdays." I entered my room and shut the alarm off. Then I began searching for my phone. It was back downstairs, still on the coffee table, but it was dead. I carried it over to the counter and got it plugged in, and after a few minutes, it had enough power to power on. There were hundreds of texts and missed calls, all of my friends. Seriously, guys, I was only tripping out for... My thoughts trailed off in my head as I looked at the top of my phone. It was Monday morning. I had less than an hour to get ready and make my way to work. How could that be? I thought. There's no fucking way it's Monday. I took the pill Friday night, and it maybe lasted till Saturday morning. Something must be wrong with my phone. I went to check my laptop. It said the same thing. Monday morning, only now I had less than 45 minutes to get ready and make it in. I shook my head and I grabbed my unopened bottle of Gatorade and an unopened bottle of water off the floor. I chugged them both, then ran upstairs and quickly got myself ready. The entire time I couldn't shake off the disbelief that I had been tripping so vividly for 2 days straight. That thought, that very concept that it had been truly that long since I took that little glowing green pill baffled me. I went to the bathroom, and when I took my clothes off to shower before getting ready for my shitty job, I noticed that on my thigh were lots of little circular welts, bruises maybe. They're in a pattern and in line, seemed like I had gotten hickeys from some horny octopus tentacle. "What the flying fuck?" I shouted as I looked at the weird pattern on my leg, and then realized I was very quickly running out of time. I shrugged it off and continued to get ready for work. When I got to my job, even with how odd my trip had been, all I could think about was taking another of those tiny capsules. The vision stayed in my mind of the pure euphoria, the absolute feeling of joy I had experienced with that first green pill. It was like taking loads of ecstasy on your way into Six Flags and then having the most incredible orgasm while riding the most thrilling roller coaster. I couldn't wait to try it again. But I made it a point to hold off until the weekend again. I mean, apparently, they lasted at least 48 hours. So I'd need the weekend. Yeah. So I could also keep my job. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching tonight's video. Or listening to tonight's podcast, because it's also a podcast on Spotify, or on Apple, or on Google, or anywhere else you can listen to a podcast. On a hot summer day, there's nothing better than a glass of iced tea. And thus for, you should check out my wife's tea shop, etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea. You can get numerous different types of tea, including a MrCreepyPasta tea, the Dark and Stormy Night, which, if you ask, you can get the MrCreepyPasta dabbing sticker on the front of it. And lastly, as always, I want to remind you guys, if you ever want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. And I really appreciate any time you guys can support the show, because honestly, I love you guys. You're all awesome. So, a very special thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Haha Saha, Ken Lenda Higuchi, Mazakine, Champinski, The Red Oak Shield Virus, G Weevil 3, Diana Kraus, Stephen Van Huss, Chance Burnett, Tristan Pelton, Nico Cowell, The Ginger Bros, Last Blade Song, Caleb Dougal, Sky Harbor, The Homeless Bird 93, Bobby Karen, Liam Newman, Aaron Stormcrow, Barbara Maceo, Thomas Burgett, S-Man, Kiri the Sloth, Bad Honey, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Shadow Morningstar, Mad Marstomp, Mr. Thud, Patrick Schoolmeister, Z. Kearley, Wolfie Nums, Rafael Rodriguez, WR Axis, Prozac and Pancakes, Mike Bullock, Acid System, Lauren, Brian Ars, and Rumble Fox. And also a huge thank you to everybody who's down there in the description down below. You guys, as always, are the real MVPs, and I appreciate you more than I can possibly say. So thank you guys, thank you all for listening, and sweet dreams.